So, Norman, let's just start with painting the picture of what is a SDR role and why is it important. So, if you can just
Mhm.
help us answer, okay, what is an SDR role?
Sure. So SDR stands for Sales Development Representative. And if you are looking in job descriptions or on Indeed, job sites like Indeed, LinkedIn, etc., this role and this title will typically be replaced either it'll say SDR, Sales Development Representative, or BDR, Business Development Representative. And the role is a sales role, but it's not the same sales that most of us think of when we think of sales. When we think of sales, we mostly think of someone who is a car salesman, someone who knocks on doors and sells like solar sale products, etc. SDRs and BDRs work for companies, but they sell to other companies. So that typical salesperson, that car salesman, that door-to-door salesman, that's called a B2C, business to consumer. But an SDR, sales development representative, or BDR, business development representative, is B2B, business selling to business. So your day to day is vastly different. Most of the B2C sales roles are commission only or heavily commission. But as it's SDR or BDR, you are a salesperson, but you are a salaried sales rep that gets both salary and bonuses and commission. And entry level sales reps earn over $80,000 a year, most of that being salary. So totally different world.
I would like to know, Norman, like, tell us about your B2C sales. How did
Right.
you first get into sales? And then we're
Yeah.
gonna go to like contrast that with the B2B and what that was like.
Right. So, and you said me or just in general, folks in B2C? Okay. So me personally, I've had exposure in B2C in a different way. So I worked in political campaigns. So we were knocking on doors and selling ideas and selling votes, etc. But most folks get into sales. They do start in that B2C capacity, car sales, knocking on doors, etc. And what you'll find when you go in these job search and job descriptions is it's a role that is advertised as making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but commission only. So you are not going to get an hourly wage. You are not going to get a salary, but you have to show up and you have to commit tons of hours getting in front of folks, handling rejection. The idea in these roles is that you have a one conversation close. So you're knocking on a door or someone is coming to your office in car sales. And within that single conversation, you want to get their commitment to purchase your product, right? That's why car salesmen have bad reps because they'll never let you out of the dealership until you sign a deal to buy a car because their entire compensation or a majority of it is on you buying that car. So it's very high pressure, but it is a great background. So anyone who's coming from that space, no one's looking down on you at all. It's an absolutely great background because you have tons of experience facing rejection in very uncomfortable situations where it's very clear that you are trying to sell to this person and you need this one conversation to be successful, right? So that is the B2C world. You need every conversation to be successful. Otherwise, you're not getting paid. So you get tons of good experience being uncomfortable, handling tough situations, objection handling. So there are objections that a potential buyer shares with you and you responding to them and responding to them effectively. You have great, super great, valuable experience. And if you've done it for a while, you have grit, right? So folks who have been in these positions for 3 months, 6 months, a year, they've had to hear no all the time. Most conversations are no, I don't want to buy a car. No, I'm not interested in your product. And they've continued to work through that for months on end while without getting paid, right? Very heavily, just getting paid in commission. So if you're coming from that background, you are a valuable asset because you have these soft skills that nobody can take away from you. Now, if you think about being in the business to business setting as a BDR, SDR, one of the most exciting pieces of that is that you are building long-term relationships. So you're
Mm.
not having one conversation with a homeowner or someone who's buying a car and that one conversation they're closing or not, and you're never going to see them again. You actually have hard work, but that hard work is to try to build a relationship over time. So I'll break down some of the core components of being an SDR BDR. So in the role, you're going to be doing a couple of main priority tasks. Number one is prospecting. Prospecting is the idea that you, as a representative of your company, you are given a list. Oftentimes you're given a list of 100, 200 companies, and the company you work for knows that your company can solve the problem of these other businesses. They have some problem that your company can solve. And they know the names of the other businesses. They want you to try to build a relationship with these 100 to 200 other businesses. So your job, your first part prospecting is to research. You're like 007. You're on all of their social media channels trying to find who are leaders in that company that could make a decision about working with your company. And you're trying to find everything you can about those leaders. So you're prospecting, which really means like you're prospecting for gold, right? And if you find enough information about this company, then you know enough to have an effective conversation with them. So that's part one. And then part two is outreach. So when a B2C, when you're knocking on doors or when you're engaging in that conversation, the best parallel for that is outreach in B2B. So you're not knocking on a door, but you are making a call or an email. You're initiating an interaction, right? And those are your two fundamental workflows, right? But the big difference being is that your sale in B2C is going to be right then and there. And usually it's going to be a lower amount. It's going to be, you might have earned a couple $100 for every door that you knocked that said they would buy from you. In B2B, you're doing a lot of research. You're reaching out using outreach techniques. And then your sale is to try to get those businesses to want to learn more about your product. So just to meet with you, right? And if they meet with you, then you get a commission. So very different, right? We're not trying to sell them the product. We're trying to sell them the meeting. And if you get the meeting, you get a commission, but you always have a salary. So it's more about being intentional about your time, doing good research, making sure when you make that call that you know exactly what you're going to say, you know exactly what problems they have. And so you can persuade the buyer to want to meet with you. And if you get that meeting, then you get your commission.
Awesome. Norman, make this real for us. Like, walk us through one of your SDR experience and kind of give us an example of what it was actually like. Who are the actual people?
Right.
How did you?
100%. So, you have to remember here, I'm coming with no college degree, so nothing on paper that says I should have these salary professional roles. And you don't need them. But what you do need is to display the skill set to these employers. So my first SDR BDR role, I was actually a rep for Google. And Google gets 40,000 applications every single month, right? So to be able to get in, I really had to show that I could do this job or had the potential to do this job. It wasn't about the resume, which is fantastic. So when I got in, they had us on Google ad products. So here's the best way to think of it. Every time you search for something that you want to buy, right? When maybe you go on Amazon, but usually you'll just search on Google search itself. And the top 4 or 5 items are always an advertiser who spent money to be the first 2, 3 items that you would have seen, right? And think of the same for YouTube. Whenever you're on YouTube watching a video, there's a moment within first 10 seconds or so that an advertisement comes up. And it's supposed to be relevant to some of your interests, something you might have searched beforehand, right? My role was to speak to the companies and get them to spend the money to be that advertisement. So I would position myself as, hey, we're from Google and we know what your customers are looking for. If you spend $500,000 with us every 3 months, we'll help you target your customers more effectively. And so your YouTube ads, the ads when people search, you'll always come up or you'll have enough information to be the number 1 search and to be more effective in your ads, right? So we worked with large companies like Sephora, any large company that you're buying goods and services from. I was reaching out to them and saying, remember, I was calling them, I was emailing them, I was searching who those leaders are. So prospecting and outreach. And then I was asking them to meet with us and saying, hey, if you meet with us, it's going to be worth your time because we can help you spend this money more effectively. And when they met with us, I got paid my commission, but ultimately we were trying to get them to spend more money with Google. And if we spent more money with Google, we can help them be more effective in getting customers.
Awesome. When you say meet with us, right, Norman? So kind of give us the
Yeah.
dynamic, how who are they meeting with? What is an AE
Yeah.
role? How are you, setting up this meeting in a way where it also like helps the company, helps the, buyer?
Great question. Great questions. So, as a new BDR SDR, you have to understand what your team looks like. So, it's not just you, because remember, your focus, your sale is just getting a meeting. So, what is a meeting? What does it look like? So, first thing you need to know is you are part of a team. Oftentimes, we call them pods, where it might be you and another BDR that is paired up with 2 to 4 other individuals. And these 2 to 4 individuals, they're called account executives. The account executive's role is to show up to the meeting that you set and build the relationship with that buyer further to the point where the buyer feels comfortable signing a contract and actually making a commitment to pay for the services or products that you represent. So the way that looks, you initiate the relationship, you set the meeting. The account executives comes in usually to demo a product, right? To share their screen, or if the company is coming, the meeting is being booked in person to show them a little bit of what your company can do. And then to continue working with them to understand what the potential customers' needs are, why the solution might be a good fit for them. And then finally, the account executive negotiates price, negotiates the contract. So that's the account executive's role. So your job is to try to set up as many of these meetings per month. That's your quota in sales. At 12, 20, 30, whatever is reasonable as decided by you and your manager. And then the account executive's job is to close those relationships, right? Build them up, make sure it's a good fit, and get the customer to sign an agreement. So when you're setting meetings, you're making calls and emails, you're trying to persuade them to want to meet with your team. Those team meetings can be on a Zoom, right? They can be all done virtually. If it's a product that you need to see and feel, you might be inviting potential customers to meet you or your team, your account executive in person. And then from there, that account executive is going to move it over to the close. Now, what you need to do, second part of this question, right? How do I help make my account executive successful? If my account executive is successful, they're going to want to work with me more. Everyone's going to like me more. I'm going to be able to get promoted faster because I set good meetings. So setting good meetings, this is the third part of the job, right? First 2 parts, prospecting, outreach, and then qualifying. Qualifying simply means, is the meeting that I'm setting a good meeting? Okay. I work for Google. I sell advertising products, Google ads, YouTube ads. If I'm setting a meeting with my grandma, not worth anyone's time. Not a good meeting. She doesn't have the money for my account executive to want to close. Not going to happen. So qualifying is the process by which you ask questions from that customer, that potential customer, before the meeting to understand if it's worth their time to work with you and your time to work with them. Right. So simply put, it's not rocket science. It's usually 5, 10 different questions that your company already knows. So they give you the playbook that when you start talking to these buyers and you say, hey, I think we can solve your problems, you should meet with us. Before you set that meeting, you ask them some of those questions. Real quick, I just want to make sure it's worth your time. Question 1, question 2, question 3. And that is qualifying them. And so if you've done that work, you've asked those questions and those questions lead to good answers that say this makes sense, then you're setting a qualified meeting and you're setting up your account executive for success.
Awesome. Norman, I want to ask you from a hiring lens, right? Because you started out as an SDR and you became an AE, senior AE, then you founded, you became a director and you founded your own company and you've helped hundreds and hundreds of people get
Yeah.
hired. So from a hiring perspective, what kind of mindset are you looking for in a new SDR, maybe who doesn't have a lot of experience?
Yeah. Remember when we talked about B2C and how that was such great experience because especially if you've been in a role like this for a long time, like insurance sales is another good example, right? Use commission only and you're just doing it forever. You're getting no's a lot. That you develop this resilience and this grit. So number one, that energy, whether you have sales experience or not, anyone who's been in a good customer facing role, you're a teacher, you're a waiter, you're in hospitality, you've been customer facing is usually a great fit for these roles because you're already experienced in those customer conversations, maybe uncomfortable situations. But the way you show up in that initial interview matters so much. And most importantly, it's the energy that you share, right? So to still have enthusiasm and be very bright and excited for the role tells me as a manager that you deliver that same energy when you speak to potential customers, right? So if you're calling a potential customer and you're trying to persuade them to meet with you, and you're like, hey, this is Norman from Google. How are you doing? The customer hears that energy through the phone, right? Or through the email. And so if you are an excited, you really believe in the product and you can deliver that energy, that's going to matter 100% because you're going to share that energy with customers. So that's number one is like your mindset and your energy. You have a can-do attitude. And then separately, you have a learning mindset. So in these interviews, you'll be challenged and tested. But as you're challenged and tested, you'll be put on the spot, asked to conduct certain techniques that a SDR or BDR would know. And it's not to show if you can do it, it's to show if you're coachable because you'll be asked to change certain things about your technique. You'll be asked to have a cold call and you'll be given feedback and then you'll be asked to do it again. So do you hear feedback and you're like, I'm excited for that feedback? I want to adapt? Or do you hear feedback and you get upset at yourself? You shut down, you get upset at others. So that energy, the I can do this, I'm excited, I'm passionate to do this, and I have a learner's mindset from just like a soft skill perspective. That's your number one and number two, sort of the biggest items you need to bring to an interview.
Amazing. So, Roman, I mean, that sounds great, man. Like instead of like door knocking or being in like having to pitch a product, high pressure,
Yeah.
like really hard. So you're saying that if people are just open-minded, if they bring their energy and like
Yeah.
really learn, like they can make almost six figures. And like, a lot of these skill sets are very much people skills and skills of really paying attention, right? Like understanding the customer needs, understand what buyer wants, and really understanding what product are. And you're saying that, companies that are hiring, they already have a lot of money. They're willing to like hire somebody, right? Something is working. So it's just a matter of like understanding what's working, what are the typical customers. So you're saying that people can just go from like these difficult sales roles to like making six figures?
Yeah, and I wanted to share too, like this sounds like a low bar or like have good energy and be a learner and be excited. But your competition as an SDR is everyone else out there who is jaded with the job hunt, who's didn't pay any attention before they got to an interview, right? So it's if you can just bring these couple of qualities, you already stand out. Now there is the hard skills that you are going to be measured for. And so if there's, taking this course, anyone who's taking this course, fantastic to you because you're getting some of the fundamentals already covered, which is huge. So you are going to be tested on those fundamentals because your hiring manager is evaluating how ready are you today? Being ready is both soft skills and hard skills. So the soft skills are the grit, the resilience, the excitement, the learner's mindset, right? That's some of the soft skills there. The hard skills are technique. Have you done the role before? Have you done similar roles before? If I put you in a scenario and ask you to have outreach attempt like a cold call, or I ask you to write a professional email that might convert into a meeting. What is your response? What can you do? But it's not usually to say, oh, this is bad, there go, we're not going to do it. It's always about how close are they? If the call is pretty good, but there are some things that can be changed, and you can accept what I shared as feedback, then I know you probably just need 1 or 2 weeks of my mentorship for you to be ready to start speaking with customers, right? If it looks like you've never done this before, then I want you to have some more practice beforehand. And maybe I'm willing to give you that practice. Maybe I'm hiring and I'm willing to spend the next 2 months ramping you up for that. And so I really just need to know, are you coachable? Do you have the good mindset and energy, right? Or do I need to make sure that you are doing some pre-training with a partner of ours, like a boot camp or something like that, right? So that's the total picture there. Is number one, most important is to have those soft skills already set up, that attention to detail, the grit, the resilience, the energy in the conversation, the coachability, learner's mindset. All right. That's number one, bring it down. And 90% of your competition doesn't have it. They're jaded. They're not enthusiastic about their role. They don't really understand what they're getting into. So it's a low bar, but if you have it, it's huge. Secondly, is that you need to be prepared that you're going to be measured for the techniques and tactics that you will deploy as an SDR, BDR. And that measurement is to determine how close to being ready are you. Whether you
Perfect. Let's go into the overview of like the hard skills. What kind of hard skills are we talking about?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, you need to be technology literate first, meaning there is different technology stacks, we call them, or tools that are used to make your job easier as an SDR, BDR. And we cover them in this course. We cover them in multiple courses. So first, if you haven't used one before, CRM, Customer Relationship Management Platform. This is your number one organizing tool to bring together all of the customer conversations you have on a day-to-day basis, all of the meetings. It's just an organizing tool for all of your notes. And so your management team sees all of the work that you're doing day to day, right? So customer relationship management. Other additional tools, the two big bodies of tools that you'll need to be aware of and hopefully literate in: lead management systems. So these are systems where, as you have 200 companies to go after, you got to find the right person in these companies, right? Who are you going to speak to? Usually their title will help you understand. And we use ATL, BTL, above the line or below the line. It'll tell you where they sit in the organization and if it's worth your time to reach out to them. But you have to find that person. Then you have to find a way to contact them, a phone number, an email, right? How are you going to find that? There are tools, lead management systems, that you can actually use to gather emails, phone numbers from hundreds of individuals at once. So you'll need to know how to operate one of these tools. You'll probably need to know how to be fluent in using LinkedIn, to be totally clear. LinkedIn is an amazing networking platform. A lot of us use it for jobs, but they don't know that we can use it to research individuals. So we can research their jobs. We can research posts that they've made, different articles that they've been a part of, videos where they've told us about themselves, about their goals for their company. And that's all the things we want to pick up on so that we can reach out to them and be effective in the conversation. So LinkedIn, your CRM, customer relationship management, your lead management system, and then finally, usually a sales enablement platform. So these are all just technology, right? It's big, but if you can get through it, you're kind of cream of the crop. Separately, hard skills, a lot of it's going to be around technique. So there's the prospecting as its own hard skill, your ability to do research at scale, understanding customers for over 100 different customers, getting a profile of them, building that out, and being able to show that strategy. So you go to LinkedIn, here's how you search for a customer, here's what information you would look for. So being able to articulate that. Then it's the outreach. So two big outreach channels: your ability to have a strong cold call, and there are techniques to having cold calls. So this is really scary if you haven't had a cold call before.
or you've just been thrown in and given a couple words to say, but there's actual techniques to make it super fun, easy for you. So your ability to show that you have technique, and then email. And so written email and the ability to write concise emails. Most of the time we come out of college, we know how to write essays. In the business world, nobody wants to see an essay. So can you take complex information and make it simple and to the point and get the person on the other end to want to respond to you, right? There's technique. So outreach as a whole, with the two biggest ones, calls and emails. The technology is going to be the biggest skill set as well. And then finally, your ability to qualify. So again, being comfortable in a conversation, we call it a discovery call. So that call, that cold call that you have, you spend some time doing discovery or qualifying. So being able to set an agenda in a call and ask questions to make sure it's a good fit. So you will be tested on this. You in your interview, you'll be asked to have these calls. You'll be asked what your strategy is to find these businesses. And so if you have some of the training or the experience, you're going to do really, really well in those interviews.
Amazing. So Norman, so I'm gonna create a little bit of structure around this, right? So, we talked a little bit about prospecting, we talked about LinkedIn a little bit, we talked about, customer discovery, but let's just start at prospecting as a body of knowledge that, I as a SDR that I need to learn, right? So, you know, help me summarize this. Like, how should I think about prospecting, the foundational basics, the
Yeah.
tool, some techniques, then we can go into the emailing part.
Awesome. Okay, so from prospecting standpoint, you need to know a couple of terms you need to know. ICP, my ideal client profile. So if you think of a business, the business you represent, they're solving problems for other businesses. So there is in their mind, in the mind or in the, of the business, there is a type of business that has the perfect problem that they can solve for, right? And that's what we call ideal client profile. And so it's usually a good example of this, right? Is, let's say I have a cybersecurity company. Cybersecurity company, an ideal client profile might be other industries or businesses that routinely get hacked, like energy companies, oil, gas, electricity, right? These companies that would be most vulnerable to a hacker. So it's like, okay, what's the industry that we think we can be most successful solving problems? And then as we go into that industry, what specific problems do businesses have that would make them most vulnerable to this issue and that we can solve? So if we go to energy, right, maybe your utility company, your power company also doesn't have the most modern security system set up. So it makes them double vulnerable for hackers and bad actors. So that's our ideal client profile, because we know they have the biggest problem and that we can solve that problem in the most successful way, make them extremely happy, right? That's how you look at the ideal client profile. So what are the characteristics of the industry and of specific businesses in those industries that make us a perfect fit for them? Okay, so if you get 200 companies sent to you as an SDR, which of those fit my ideal client profile that I know I'm going to be super successful with if we start a conversation? From there, it's your BP, your buyer persona. This is all under prospecting, right? So now I'm searching for who are the individuals within the company who are absolutely perfect for me to reach out to because they are dealing with this problem on the day-to-day, or the solving this problem, they would be in charge of making a decision for solving that problem. All right. So again, if it's cybersecurity and we're looking at energy companies that don't have modern infrastructure, there might be someone who leads security or leads IT, information technology at that company, whose entire responsibility is to protect that company. But guess what? They don't have the modern tools. So they're always underwater, right? So that might be the person that's my buyer persona to go after, right? You want to next figure out, are they ATL or BTL? Are they above the line or below the line? The line is the decision-making line. An easy way to think about this is if you ask them to pay $20,000 today for your solution, could they write the check or would they have to ask for somebody? If they'd have to ask around, they might be below the line. If they could write the check, they might be above the line. Or if they have a lot of influence on someone who could write the check above the line. So usually your company will give you this information, but sometimes you'll be at a company that's still figuring things out. They're a startup. So that's how you think about your work is who's our ideal client profile? Who's our buyer persona? The one that's feeling the pain the most, right? Or is in charge of addressing that pain and therefore can unlock solutions for the company. Once you have that information, what you're spending a lot of your time on is search. So a couple of ways you search is Google, absolutely. So you usually will search by the title. So you know that you're looking for directors of information technology, directors of security, easy way to look. And you know that you're looking for energy companies. So that in alone is a Google search, right? Usually the most effective way to do this is to search on LinkedIn. So there are different LinkedIn Sales Navigator, for example, that allow you to have almost unlimited searches where you can search by title, by industry, right? And so now you have 200 companies that you know you're going after, and you found out a way that you can search for the right people at those companies by title, etc., industry, using LinkedIn as an example. From there, you now are spending your time first getting their phone numbers and emails. So those lead management systems, you're pulling up phone numbers and emails. And separately, going into those individual profiles and researching what you can about them, right? So let's say it's your Monday of the week, that's your prospecting day. All you're doing on Monday is you're looking up companies, you're looking up buyer personas, you're getting their phone numbers and emails, and then you're spending some of the day researching them on their LinkedIn profile for different posts, different things that they've discussed that's relevant to cybersecurity, right? Relevant to your product. And that is prospecting, finding the right company, finding the right person, and finding enough information to make sure when you reach out that it's relevant and that they want to hear from you.
Amazing. Apart from LinkedIn, what are some other prospecting tools that you want to learn?
Some of the big ones, the big three, if you will, Lead IQ. We use that here at Elevate and we sponsor all of our students have it. It's a bit of a database plus a tool that as you go on LinkedIn profiles or websites, you can pull up information about the individuals who work there. So Lead IQ is a good one. Seamless.ai, very similar to Lead IQ. They have their own database where you can search up names and titles and they can give you information about those individuals, or you can get it from LinkedIn profiles. And finally, ZoomInfo is the biggest. So if a company that you work for has ZoomInfo, that's the largest database that's out there for this space, where you can, again, simply search for titles, industries, everything you need for your buyer persona, and you will have lists of hundreds of individuals that might meet that criteria.
Amazing. Okay, let's go into cold emailing then.
Yeah.
Walk us through what is cold emailing? How does this work? How does you write an email that stands out?
100%. So the first thing you need to do, take a step back and realize the Bridge Group is an industry group that surveys hundreds of corporations every year. And what they do when they survey, they ask questions of their sales teams to understand how hard or easy is it to get in touch with your customers this year. And they track that difficulty / easy and how that changes every year, every 2 years. Last time the Bridge Group came out with a study, I think it took over 10 attempts to get in touch with one person. Okay, so as we think about calls and emails, you have to be ready for the long game, which is that it's not the first email you send over that'll get you. It might be, but on average, across the entire country, it's going to take at least 10. Everyone's saying it's taking at least 10 times. And that's been becoming more and more difficult as people have used different tools like AI to automate messages, etc. There's a lot of clutter. So you have to stand out in your outreach. One of the ways you're going to stand out is your subject line. So we have clear parameters for that. The best subject lines almost look like they came from a friend. So they make you stop, they make you think, they make you drive curiosity. They're usually 4 words or less, right? If you're sending over tickets or a concert idea to a friend, you might say, celebrity tickets, and that would be the entire subject line, right? So your friend would be curious, but it would be relevant. What everyone else is doing, right? Sephora and most e-commerce brands, they have these really detailed, bloated subject lines, right? So again, you have to stand out. And so easiest way to stand out is make it short, succinct, couple of words, and make it sound like it came from a friend. And that'll drive curiosity. Then it's the email. And one thing that we forget often is most people are operating from their phones. So your email has to be readable on the phone, which means you can't have large paragraphs, because we as the buyer will have eye fatigue and we won't want to go through it, especially if I get hundreds of emails a day. So you're making sure that subject line makes sense, is really optimized. Next, you're optimizing for the first sentence. That first sentence has to stand out. It has to use some of the prospecting information you have, right? It could be something that's totally not related to your product, but gets them hooked in. We had a student who was applying for a job, and he realized that one of the sales managers of the company he was applying for liked the Packers, and the Packers didn't do well. And so he said, hey, I bet your Packers can't beat my Niners, right? Whatever it was. And that was the first sentence. And it was designed to stand out and to stop the buyer from just scrolling or forwarding it to spam. So your first sentence you want to optimize for, you want to remember that it's on mobile. So you want it to be short, succinct. You also want to make sure there's a lot of spacing because it's easier to read on mobile. And then in your second sentence or third sentence, that's your value proposition. That's what you're sharing. Here's why you should meet with me and my team. Here's the problem that we solve in a way that's relevant to you. All right. So a good example is cybersecurity. I might say, most of our partners we work with understand the threats for today, but they're still using XYZ software from 1990s, and it's creating huge vulnerability. Here's what we do, right? We help modernize your cybersecurity using XYZ, right? I thought it might be a good fit for you. And so that's your value proposition. You should talk to us because we understand what you're using today, and what we're offering is different and can improve the results for you. That's your value proposition. This is your next second or third sentence. Then finally, your last sentence, your fourth sentence, if you can keep it to 4 sentences, is your ask. You're asking for the meeting. The big piece of feedback here is you don't want to ask yes or no questions generally. Okay. Yes or no. No is safety. So buyers typically are going to go with no. So a lot of times you want to be assumptive. What time on Thursday would work best for us to connect? Right. So you're assuming the sale, you're assuming the conversation is a yes. So after you tell them why they should connect with you, then you start offering times to connect with you. I'd love to speak with you about this. I've got Thursday and Friday available. Which day is better for you? Right. It's not a yes or no question. It's which day is better for you. This is the building blocks for an excellent email on your first try.